Hi, it's Natasha and Carl. 1st of July again, 2000 hours, 8 p.m. We're going to read from chapter 10 now. I've just earlier read from chapter 9, and that was all about the new bloke, Coke, who's come to the workplace, but Esther and Mallory are taken over from the other guy, Charles. So this new guy, Kirk, has gone about trying to, I don't know, what's it called when you want to get something out of people that enriches you, but you don't want to give them anything for it? Exploitation. Yeah, we're trying to exploit them. But anyway, the priest was, or is it the pastor, was let him know the conditions. Yeah, I have to invest in the community and the church before they'll support his venture. I think that was pretty much the gist of the whole of chapter 9. So here we have chapter 10. Right. Preston Sinclair had known Bailey Reynolds long enough to know when he was genuinely happy and when he was smiling out of habit. One look at his right hand man's face revealed a false joviality. Preston leaned forward. "Well," he said, "tell me what happened." Preston Humphrey Boone Preston Humphrey Boone isn't interested in coming to work for Angel City. Michael Coleman, our human resources person, spoke with him. I spoke with him. This isn't a marriage for him. There are plenty of other candidates, he said smoothly, holding his curved fingers in his lap. And I've compiled a list of 5. 3 black men, 1 Latino, and an Asian woman. I had Michelle put out some preliminary feelers, and from what she told me, they are all highly qualified. My suggestion is that we begin the selection process with one of these people. Describe them to me. Preston listened attentively as Bailey, after pulling a folder from his briefcase, smiled his way through a litany of facts about each prospective employee. He wondered why Bailey was selling so hard, pointing out the virtues of each of the other candidates with an intensity that bordered on passion. The slate of aspirants all had impeccable banking credentials, but none of them seemed to belong to any civic organisations. They weren't known outside of their field. They just didn't have star quality. "Call Humphrey Boone and tell him that I'd like to meet with him," Preston said. Bailey's mouth hung wide open for a few seconds before he filled it with a smile. "Certainly, Preston. I'm sure that would make a difference." I have to wait for the aeroplane. Bailey's mouth hung wide open for a few seconds before he filled it with a smile. "Certainly, Preston. I'm sure that would make a difference. I want to get with him as soon as possible. Today. Tomorrow? At his convenience." He was surprised at the intensity he felt. If Bailey noticed his excitement, his only comment was a silent one. A slight nodding of his head. A faint no problem smile. Later that evening, Preston took a sip of chilled German white wine as soon as Claire finished pouring it for him. It was slightly sweet and very good. "Wait for a toast," she chided, snuggling next to him on the sofa in a large family room. She extended her glass to her husband's and clicked it against his merrily. Preston thought the gesture surprisingly frivolous. Claire was usually a very serious person. "To being parents again," she said with a laugh. Above them, on the second floor, they could hear their sons, Robbie and Prez, their loud voices booming from room to room. They were home for the holidays. Preston glanced at Claire. She seemed younger, her face relaxed and happy as she sat drinking the wine. The boys always had a cheering effect on her. They heard the clatter of 2 pairs of footsteps on the stairs. Listening to his sons, Preston was amazed at how much noise they made. The house was usually so quiet after he got home from work. He and Claire weren't big on conversation. After nearly 25 years of marriage, they seemed to read each other's moods without saying anything at all. At least Preston didn't feel the need to talk. But when the boys were around, The house was filled with conversation and laughter. Preston liked to dream of all the wonderful things they would accomplish. He had plans for them, big plans. They would have entree into the most prestigious business circles. If he could become governor, why, one of them might well become president. Whatever they wanted, he was going to help them get it. The boys bounded into the family room, smelling like shampoo and cologne, their thick brown hair blown dry. Preston noticed that his wife began smiling as soon as they appeared. "We're going out," Pres announced, looking at his mother. He was the older of the two boys, although Robbie was taller. God, they were handsome, Preston thought, watching them, and things were so much easier for them than they had been for him. He was grateful for that his money and success made everything so simple for them. What was his father ever able to give him, except a sermon and some worn-out platitudes? "Where are you going?" Claire asked. "Hanging out with some friends, not too far from here." Pres stood very close to his mother, so that it seemed natural when she rubbed his arm while he was talking to her. "Which car do you want?" Claire asked. The boys had flown in from the East Coast, leaving their vehicles behind. "Who's got the gas?" Robbie quipped. His mother let go of Pres's arm, reached out and swatted him. Robbie tousled her hair very gently. "Look at Blondie," he said jokingly. Preston stared at his wife's hair. To his surprise, it did seem lighter, more golden. Very beautiful, he thought. "Take my car," she said. "You know where the keys are. Are you going to see Bill and Adam tonight? Did they get in? Did they get in yet?" "Yeah, they're back. They'll be there." "How about Amber and Holly and the Gruber twins? Are they around yet?" She spoke to both boys, but looked particularly hard in Pres's direction. Preston listened. He didn't recognise any of the names his wife was rattling off. He felt annoyed and oddly lonesome. "Claire, would you get me some more wine?" he said a bit peevishly. One moment. "Yeah, in a minute, darling," Claire said. Preston thought he detected a slight edge to her voice. Not unpleasant, just an edge. Pres grinned at his brother and pushed back a stubborn lock of brown hair that kept falling forward onto his forehead. Do you think that last was a legitimate question, or just a neat way to exercise her right to be nosy?" Claire chuckled merrily. "Oh, it was definitely an in, Pres," Robbie said. He was grinning also. "And if we answer it, what will be the next question, Rob?" "Oh, she'll say..." He pursed his lips together in a perfect imitation of his mother, and his voice went up an octave. "And do you think either of you boys are going to take any of those beautiful girls out while you're home?" "Then what?" "Then she'll say, 'By the way, did you boys receive that copy of the 20 safest condoms that I sent you?'" "Then what will she say?" Rob tilted his head slightly and put his hand to his mouth as though he were about to whisper. "By the way, are you boys carrying your condoms? You know they are of absolutely no use to you at home in your drawer." The boys laughed and Claire giggled, then crossed her legs demurely. "Naturally, as a mother, I have a few concerns." Preston listened in amazement. The idea of his wife sending Pres and Rob lists of rubbers was shocking. Not that he disapproved. He supposed that the times warranted such drastic precautions. He was happy that she'd done it. Still, it seemed totally out of character for Claire to be so brazen. He peered at his wife and was struck by the brightness of her hair. Why hadn't he noticed it before? He stared at the three of them, huddling together, like a football team about to make a play, while he stood on the sidelines. The two boys said goodnight to both their parents and started for the garage. Preston watched them as they walked away from him. "You boys have fun," he called out. It was an afterthought. He had no idea of what they called fun. There were young people running in and out of the house throughout the holidays. Preston continued to go into the office, but Claire insisted that he come home early. "I want you to have time with the boys," she'd say, with an urgency that increased as it got closer to Christmas. Time with the boys. The words felt familiar, like an old hat found in the bottom of a trunk. Preston made several attempts at conversation, but Pres and Robbie never really seemed to have time to talk, with all their coming and going. Robbie was especially busy. Every night, he zoomed off to some party, not to surface at home again until sometime the next afternoon. But Preston did manage to have quick exchanges with him about the car, about school. Once, Robbie was telling him what he thought about the new president. When the phone rang and Claire gaily called out his name, Robbie fled from his father with an alacrity that was almost uncivil. Ooh, alacrity. I mean, look up. Oh, I have to do it in real time. Alacrity. I thought it's just something, a really sharp way of doing something. But I'm not really sure. Speed or quickness and eagerness. Where was we? With an I don't know what to do. Here we go. Robbie fled from his father with an alacrity that was almost uncivil. Pez was much more subdued and harder to approach. After attending an initial flurry of parties and get-togethers, he settled into being a homebody, watching television in the family room, listening to music or chatting with his mother in the kitchen. One night, Preston walked in on his older son and found him sitting contemplatively in the dark living room. The drapes were open. He seemed to be staring at the moon. "Press," he called softly as he turned on a lamp. The sudden stream of bright light revealed the palpable outlines of melancholy etched in his son's face. Seeing the boy's pain seemed to stir a kind of quickening panic inside him. Preston could feel his heart thundering in his chest. He couldn't imagine his son being unhappy. For a moment, a sense of absolute desolation washed over him. He walked out of the room, resolving then to take both boys aside, have a few words with them. That's what he'd do. But of course he didn't. There was no time. Robbie and Prez left their respective schools the day after New Year's, and in a few days before, for one reason after another, he just couldn't connect with them. In the car on the way to the airport, there wasn't enough privacy to have a man-to-man talk with his sons, and somehow everything else he wanted to say to them never got said. Claire talked a great deal in the car and while they were all waiting for the plane, but Preston mostly listened. When they began boarding, he stood back and watched while the boys kissed their mother, and then he gave them a clumsy hug. An awkward affair because he ended up attempting to put his arms around both of them at the same time, and of course the boys were different heights, and so he held one under the arm and one just above the waist. He could feel them trying to wriggle out of his grip, but Preston held on to them. He slipped his arms up and down until they stopped squirming, until they were still, and he was going to squeeze them. But the plane was called then, and they finally did pull away and ran toward the gate. Claire waved to them and blew kisses. Preston stood rigidly with his still hands that were holding on to nothing. That's the end of chapter 10. Let's see how long 11 is. 11's pretty short, so I'm going to read on. Chapter 11. The Wednesday after New Year's Day, Humphrey Boone stood inside his gargantuan walk-in closet and paused in front of a long row of suits. He chose a navy blue pinstriped Armani, one of 3 in his wardrobe of 30-plus Italian cut-work uniforms. He usually rotated his suits, putting the last one worn at the end of the line so that he never wore the same outfit more than once in any given month, a device that freed him of having to make last-minute fashion decisions. On special occasions, he broke his routine. Today was special. He turned to the other side of his closet and eyed several rows of shoes. Searching among the nearly 50 boxes for his newly purchased navy Ferragamos, as he scanned each container, he looked in the upper right-hand corner for the descriptive label he affixed to each new pair of shoes he bought. The labelled shoes were stored with others of the same colour and category: dress, casual, sport, evening. One moment. The system worked very well, and it usually didn't take Humphrey a long time to dress. Today he was a little late. Shoes and suit in hand, he backed out of the closet and slid the door closed. It was nearly 6:45, and he had an 8:15 appointment with Preston Sinclair at Angel City's downtown branch. He hadn't even begun his morning routine. The water in the shower was already running as Humphrey stepped inside. The shower lasted exactly 30 minutes, during which time he soaped himself and rinsed off several times and vigorously scrubbed his fingernails with a small brush. He shampooed his short hair 4 sudsings, Sudsings. He shampooed his short hair 4 sudsings, which he did every morning, and applied an instant conditioner, letting it remain in his hair for 5 minutes before he rinsed it out. When he stepped from the shower, he smelled like sandalwood and coconut. He lotioned his body from head to toe with a thick white cream that was made by a French company and cost $25 a jar. Humphrey couldn't stand being grey and ashy, and he'd found that the French lotion was the only thing that worked other than Vaseline, and he certainly wasn't going to use that. His Vaseline days were far behind him. Humphrey put a small bit of gel and a tiny dab of Duke hair conditioner in his palm and rubbed his hands together, then massaged the mixture into his scalp first and then all over his hair. He'd experimented for a long time to find out which preparations gave his hair a softer appearance. He didn't want to look as though he had a jerry curl, all wet and dripping like some ghetto gangbanger, but his hair was very kinky and he thought it needed a lot of moisturising. His natural hair offended him. He believed that without the creams and conditioners, it was too nappy. N.A.P.P.Y. As he carefully combed and brushed his hair, he avoided looking in the mirror. He shaved the same way, looking only at his cheeks and chin, hating the razor bumps he saw. He poured aftershave into his hands and slapped his cheeks and chin briskly. Then he splashed on a little cologne in the same scent. He brushed his teeth carefully and then gargled for about 5 minutes before he applied a very strong antiperspirant. Profuse perspiration was a problem for him, and in his position he couldn't afford to have body odour. He couldn't afford to be anything less than totally presentable and acceptable at all times. Grabbing a towel and drying himself, Humphrey rushed into his bedroom. He'd ironed his shirt the night before, even though it had come directly from the laundry and hadn't been worn. The ironing was a habit, as was shining his shoes, which he did every Thursday night while he watched television. He dressed quickly and then gave his bedroom a fast survey. His bed was made and nothing was out of place. He hated the sight of disorder. Grabbing his briefcase, which was on the floor, leaning against his bed, he hurried out the door. The case was made of fine black leather, and on the outside were his initials, monogrammed in gold. The feel of the leather was always reassuring to him. As he turned off the Marina Freeway in his shiny Mercedes SEL 500, he thought about the interview he was about to have at Angel City National Bank. Ever since the Gazette ran a story about his role in the Lebanon Hospital private placement loan, his telephone had been ringing off the hook with job offers. This wouldn't be the first meeting he'd had since April 29, and it probably wouldn't be exactly like the others he'd gone on. A colossal waste of time. Another white man's post-riot guilt trip. He was in vogue, and he knew it. Ever since the riots, every major bank in Los Angeles had called him in for a spook-by-the-door position. But when it came to salary, responsibility, and perks, none of them were offering anything to tempt him. Angel City was smaller and far less prestigious than the New York money center where he was employed, and it was probably even more racist, he thought. Might as well sleep with the devil I know, he mused. If the white boys where he worked didn't like him, at least they respected him and knew enough not to mess with him. To go someplace new, he'd have to form new alliances and constantly watch his back. As he veered off the exit for the Santa Monica Freeway heading east, he almost reached for the car phone to cancel the appointment, but he stopped himself. An interview with the president of a major bank was not something to take lightly. A black man in corporate America couldn't afford to insult anyone. Humphrey was a bit surprised when the assistant told him that the meeting had been changed from Preston Sinclair's office to the boardroom. He took the elevator to the 34th floor. The machine ascended smoothly and effortlessly with a little noise and scarcely any vibration. He was grateful for the swift ride because sometimes elevators frightened him. When the doors closed, he often felt panic welling up inside him, scraping through his throat until he wanted to scream. But today he didn't have time to be frightened, and when he got off, another assistant met him in front of the elevator. She walked with him toward 2 huge oak doors and knocked sharply. He heard a man's voice, and a woman poked her head inside the door. "Mr. Boone is here, sir," she said. President Sinclair was standing to greet him. It was good of you to come, Mr. Boone, Preston said, extending his hand. Boone was taller than Preston had imagined. He was at least 6'2", maybe 6'3". Humphrey Boone was a sinewy black racehorse of a man, whose sharp eyes seemed to take in everything at once. He exuded class and sophistication, from his close-cut hair to the smooth gloss of his expensive leather shoes. He had the look that Preston was after, the look of leadership. Sit down, please. Is there anything I can offer you? Coffee? Tea? Juice? No, thank you. I'm honoured to meet you. It's not often a man is interviewed by the CEO of the fifth largest bank in the state, Humphrey said easily. He glanced around the room. I've got neighbours. Would you believe it? I've got neighbours. They're talking. Oh, they finished talking. Anyway, no, thank you. I'm honoured to meet you. No, thank you. I'm honoured to meet you. It's not often a man is interviewed by the CEO of the fifth largest bank in the state, Humphrey said easily. He glanced around the room. It bespoke old money. The man was trying to impress him. But why? Especially when you've made it quite clear that you're not interested in our offer. Their eyes met. The black man held the stare and smiled mildly. Here's one who puts his cards on the table, he thought. This might be interesting. Well, he said finally, as I said, I'm honoured, and I'm here. Preston leaned forward just slightly and caught a subtle whiff of aftershave. Nothing too perfumey, just a bracing, clean smell. The man had the whitest teeth he'd ever seen in his life. He wondered if they only appeared that way because of the contrast they made with his very dark skin. I read about your work with Lebanon. That was very impressive. When I hear about highly credentialed people with awesome track records, I want them on my team. Mr. Boone, I want you on my team. I'm flattered, Mr. Sinclair, but as you must know, I specialise in private placement loans. I know that Angel City occasionally does them, but not at the volume or the level that I'm used to. I've got some long-range goals, and commerce is willing to be very accommodating. Tell me what you want, what you're willing to do so I can get the hell out of here, Humphrey thought. Sinclair nodded. So far, Humphrey Boone hadn't told him anything that he hadn't expected to hear. I'm very interested in your goals, Mr. Boone. Tell me, are you from Los Angeles? Yes, I'm one of the rare native sons. I see. And what do your parents do? Humphrey shifted in his seat. My mother is a teacher and my father is a lawyer. He rubbed his hand across his mouth. Is your father with one of the firms in town? Humphrey had to hold back a laugh. What black man old enough to be his father was a member of any established white firm? Private practice, Humphrey said. And you weren't interested in following in your father's footsteps? Preston smiled mildly. No, I knew early on that I had no legal talents. Banking has always intrigued me. 5 years from now, I'd like to be a regional senior vice president in charge of private placement, he said, easily segueing into the topic he knew that Preston was steering him toward. Are you going to help me get there, white boy? Humphrey wondered as he stared into Preston's dull-coloured face. Preston rose abruptly and walked over to the picture window. For the first time since he had come to Angel City, he forgave his predecessor his excesses. From the 34th floor picture window, the colossal paean, and I should know what that means. Paean, P-A-E-N. I forgot. Oh, God. It's a joyful praise or exaltation. Almost like a hymn or a poem can be. Right, from the 34th floor picture window, that colossal paean. I'm doing my own heading today. Paean. It's pronounced the opposite to how it's spelled. It's spelled P-A-E-N. And it's spelled the opposite. That's the Igbo language, opposite lanes. From the 34th floor picture window, that colossal paean to profligacy. I don't know what profligacy means. I've never seen that word before. Profligacy. Oh, it means to be dissolute. But where is it going? Let's see if anyone listens to this. I hope the story. I'm not ruining the story. Right, profligacy. PROFLIGACY means to be in a state of vicious course of life, of being abandoned in moral principle and in vice, dissolute. You're just how you might say it. You're just lost. You're just lost. From the 30th floor. Come on. Concentrate, folks. From the 34th floor picture window, that colossal paean to profligacy, a man could see himself as master of all he surveyed. That was precisely the image he wanted Humphrey Boone to have of himself. Mr. Boone, Humphrey, have you ever seen the view from this high? Come take a look. The black man walked over to the window, wondering what the view had to do with why he was here. But as he stood and looked out at the city, he had to admit that the scene was spectacular, truly breathtaking. You've been kind enough to share your goals with me. Allow me to tell you some of mine, Preston said. First, let me give you a brief bit of my background. Let me give you a brief bit of background. I've only been president of Angel City for a year. In the beginning of my administration, I set some goals, the usual bottom line barometer of success, and then the riots happened. I don't mind telling you, it caused me to do some soul searching. Here it comes, Humphrey thought. He smiled benignly, trying to mask the cynicism he knew was filling his eyes. More we shall overcome bullshit. Preston stole a quick look at the black man standing next to him. He thought he heard Humphrey sighing, but they were far enough apart that he couldn't be sure. Yes, soul-searching, he repeated. The phrase was one his father used quite a bit, and as soon as those words were out of his mouth, he saw the old man in his ministerial robes, leaning against the pulpit, his eyes filled with humility and pious sincerity. Mr. Boone, I'll be frank with you. Angel City National Bank has a lot of minority customers. African Americans, Latinos, Asians, all kinds of people walk through our doors every day and trust us with their money. What we don't have is a lot of minority employees, at least not many with decision-making power. In these days and times, that's an untenable situation, and I mean to rectify it. Oh, aeroplane. I can't poise it properly without the risk of losing the whole routine. So anyway, no, I already said the bullshit line. Alright, fine. I'm gonna post there. Oh, here we go, yeah. What we don't have is a lot of minority employees with what we don't have is a lot of minority employees, at least not many, with decision-making power. In these days and times, that's an untenable situation, and I mean to rectify it. That's admirable, Mr. Sinclair. I sincerely wish more people in your position felt the same way. Humphrey gave Preston's smile number 101 from the catalogue of corporate Negro smiles, the same curve of teeth and lips that he'd flashed on countless other white men who wanted to impress him with their liberal credentials. Preston hesitated, trying to figure out what he was sensing from the man who nodded at him so pleasantly, listened to him so attentively. The air between them was charged with something that bordered on anger, but didn't have its fire, that resembled sadness, but lacked its depth. Preston looked at Humphrey again and felt a resistance so strong that it was impossible to misinterpret it. God. The man doesn't believe a word I'm saying, Preston thought. The revelation stunned him. Preston was speechless, but only for a moment. He envisioned the photograph of Humphrey Boone and him in the Gazette. The caption would read, Angel City President names black to top post. That mental picture was the incentive he needed to plunge ahead with vigour. I've instituted a diversity program here at the bank. which is a three-pronged program. He spoke with the enthusiasm of a candidate on the stump and watched for a telltale flicker of interest in Humphrey's eyes. There was none. Humphrey had heard it all before. Diversity program? God, every company in Los Angeles has one. And what difference have they made? In a minute, he's going to offer me some window dressing job with no responsibility, no potential for growth, no. The program is off to a rousing start and will serve as a foundation for some fundamental changes in this institution that I hope are going to have a truly profound impact on the city's social structure. What I feel will enhance the diversity program is for employees of all races to know that at Angel City there is no glass ceiling. The top rung of the ladder is available to those who work hard. That's why I wanted to speak with you, Mr. Boone. I feel that Angel City has a unique opportunity to offer you. I am prepared to create a position for you. Several weeks ago, our regional manager was transferred to South Central as part of the diversity program. The four downtown branches all reported to him. They numbered some 200 people and he oversaw a multi-million-dollar budget. We've had someone in an acting capacity since he left. What I'm proposing is that you take over that position and, in addition to those duties, oversee and expand the existing private placement program at Angel City. I need my water from the yolk there. It tastes like it all there. I've lost it. I'm gonna have. It's here somewhere. Oh, maybe I finished it. Oh, I finished it. Right, let's see if I could go. How long can go on this same saliva? The program is off to a rousing start and will serve as a foundation for some fundamental changes in this institution that I hope are going to have a truly profound impact on the city's social structure. What I feel will enhance the diversity program is for employees of all races to know that at Angel City there is no glass ceiling. The top rung of the ladder is available to those who work hard. That's why I wanted to speak with you, Mr. Boone. I feel that Angel City has a unique opportunity to offer you. I am prepared to create a position for you. Several weeks ago, I read this already, our regional manager was transferred to South Central as part of the diversity program. The four downtown branches all reported to him. They numbered some 200 people and he oversaw a multi-million-dollar budget. We've had someone in an acting capacity since he left. What I'm proposing is that you take over that position. And in addition to those duties, oversee and expand the existing private placement program at Angel City. We could set up a bonus system commensurate with what you've been earning. Does the idea of creating something all your own excite you? Regional manager. Start and manage his own private placement program? Humphrey tried to monitor the rising excitement he felt. I think everyone dreams of forming something useful and lasting, he said cautiously. Sensing a change in the air, Preston ploughed ahead. In addition, we are in a discussion stage of instituting a minority lending program. This would be a twofold affair. Angel City would offer low-interest mortgage and business loans to applicants who wouldn't qualify using our normal system. As I said, this is a program in the planning stages. But if we adopt it, that would be your baby as well. Let's be frank, shall we? What are you making now? A base salary of what? $100,000, maybe $115,000, with a very generous bonus structure? You could earn about $160,000 or so a year, give or take a few dollars. You're paid handsomely and you deserve every penny. You've done well, Mr. Boone, but how many deals can you rely on in this market? Your deal-making skills are superb, but you lack management experience. I'm offering you a chance to broaden your skill base. A sixth sense told Humphrey to mask his interest. Mr. Sinclair, with all due respect, I'm not lacking in opportunities at Commerce. They respect my talent, and as you say, I'm well rewarded. They are also aware of the direction I'm interested in going in. Why should I jump ship? Preston sensed it was the time to play his trump. He leaned over the table and looked Humphrey directly in his eyes. "You'll never be president of Commerce." With more than a little satisfaction, Preston saw the dark eyes widen, blink rapidly, and then open even wider. He had Humphrey's attention now. Preston noticed his undivided attention. Humphrey laughed mildly and kept his sharp dark eyes focused on Preston's face. "Are you offering me the presidency of Angel City? Is that what you're saying?" "Absolutely not. At the moment, the job is taken. But I am in a position to make a promise. If you accept my offer, and if you do the job that I believe you're capable of, I'll groom you for the presidency." I know what you're thinking, Mr. Boone. Why would I go out on a limb like that? Well, I've had you thoroughly researched. I've spoken with every boss you've ever had. You see, I'm a risk taker, but I don't take foolish risks. You, Mr. Boone, appear to be a sure thing. Humphrey attempted to respond, but he couldn't speak. For the first time since he'd been in corporate America, a white man had surprised him. "I'm 53 years old," Preston said after Humphrey remained silent. "I've been in banking for more than 25 years, and it's been good to me. But I have other aspirations, other options, which I plan to exercise within the next 3, no more than 5 years. I want to leave behind me not only a replacement, but a legacy. I'm asking you to consider being that." "Mrs. Sinclair, as I said, I'm very flattered that you're interested in me, but I want to be very frank with you. Commerce has given me a great deal of autonomy and a chance to move forward at a rather accelerated pace. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on. Come on, come on. England won, they said. But you wouldn't know it. I don't hear a peep out of anybody. Oh dear. Right. Commerce has given me a great deal of autonomy and a chance to move forward at a rather accelerated pace. They've given you golden handcuffs, that's all. I beg your pardon? You're making money. You're not making progress. Let me say it again. Preach. You're making money. You're not making progress. There's a difference. He patted Humphrey on his shoulder several times and then extended his hand. "Mr. Boone, why don't you think about your future and give me a call in a week?" Humphrey took a last look out the window. Far below him, the city looked like something that could be controlled, even conquered. "I want to thank you for your interest. I've enjoyed our chat and I'll be in touch," he said. Humphrey could barely make it out of the room without jumping up and clicking his heels. "President!" He forced himself to calm down. He didn't know Preston Sinclair from a hole in the ground. The man might mean what he said, or he could be blowing out hot air. The man might mean what he said, or he could be blowing out hot air. When the doors of the elevator opened on the first floor, Humphrey was dizzy and light-headed. The elevator had descended so rapidly that for a moment he felt almost drunk. He walked toward the front entrance with the quick steps of a dancer. In a place deep within him, he felt acknowledged and validated, as though someone had just handed him a trophy. He knew the parameters for a black man in banking were narrow. There were lines that couldn't be crossed without intimidating people who could topple him. If there was anything that scared white folks more than a black man with a gun, it was a black man in a suit. He'd learned to work beneath a glass ceiling, knowing that if he pressed against it too hard, he'd crack his skull. He'd seen it happen to others. He'd watched fast-tracking brothers climb up the ladder, helter-skelter, zooming, only to get stuck on the middle rung, or, worse yet, knocked off the ladder altogether. It was the reason he planned to leave commerce eventually and start his own business. Entrepreneurship was the only way a black man could really succeed in America. It was how Jews had made it, and how the Koreans were forging ahead. The Fortune 500 would always be the province of men with his credentials, but not his colour. As he pushed open the glass doors to a smog-filled Los Angeles morning, he felt a surge of power. Walking to the corner, he felt something within him stir. A part of his dormant soul wake up and say, maybe. Humphrey chuckled a little as he waited for the light to change. If Preston Sinclair was If Preston Sinclair was conning him, for whatever reasons, at least that white boy knew the right things to say. Hours later, the Solid Rock Baptist Church Manhood Training Council gathered in one of the many small meeting rooms in the lower level of Black Los Angeles' most renowned house of worship. As Humphrey Boone stood before a group of 15 black boys, he drew his first calm breath of the day. Although there was nothing serene about the group he faced, ranging in age from 9 to 12, the boys hailed from the southern quadrant of the city and were rounding the curve into manhood at a dangerous speed. At risk was a euphemism most commonly associated with them. Looking into their brown faces, Humphrey remembered his own accelerated boyhood. His was not the privileged childhood with two educated parents that he'd described to Preston Sinclair. A lie he'd concocted years ago to make himself fit in, but a battle for survival in South Central. Every scar on the dark faces before him echoed his own ancient confrontations with the demons of the street. He had won those battles, armed with nothing more than his mother's steady hand on his shoulders, the guidance of one or two teachers who saw his early promise, and his own inner yearnings and fragile faith that life could be better, even for black people. But the boys before him were at greater risk than he had ever known. His father was a shadowy memory, but his mother had been made of steel. Some of the boys sitting before him couldn't even claim their mothers because crack had a stronger hold on them than any maternal instinct. Humphrey had been a volunteer mentor for the preteen boys for 3 years, beginning when Reverend Odell Rice, a fraternity brother of his, enlisted his assistance with ministerial persuasion. We've already lost a generation. Black boys are going down the slippery tubes to hell if brothers like yourself don't step in and give them some guidance. And don't give me that I don't have any time bullshit. Make time. And you're supposed to be a man of the cloth, Humphrey said, laughing. Cussing like that? Damn straight. Lord said I could be myself. Amen, hallelujah. So there we go. And you're supposed to be a man of the cloth, Humphrey said, laughing, cussing like that. Damn straight. Lord said I could be myself. Why don't I just write you a check, Odell? Do that, great big one, and then bring your black ass along with it on Wednesday, and I'll give you your crew. Humphrey gave a sigh of resignation. How much time are we talking about? 2 hours, 1 night a week for 1 year. Man, you got time to make money for the white man. You got time to save your own kids. I'll see you next Wednesday. As he stood in front of the room, looking into the eyes of the 10, 11 and 12-year-olds who appraised him, Humphrey felt like a combination teacher and father, which in fact was what he was. The first few months he had worked with boys, he resisted that role, but now it fit comfortably. In truth, he enjoyed working with the young men and even allowed himself to hope that he was making a positive difference in their lives. He cleared his throat and the noise died down. Okay. Last week we discussed our emotions, he said. Does anybody remember what emotions we talked about? Reverend Rice had given him a curriculum. When he began mentoring, telling him to feel free to expand it, Humphrey liked to think of himself as giving his boys life skills, the kind of guidance he remembered needing when he was as young and at risk as they were. During some sessions, they played basketball in the church's gym. Other times, he instructed the boys to bring in their homework, and the night turned into a tutorial class. Many of the kids were behind in school, but there were a few who were startlingly brilliant. There were boys in his group who were salvageable, and some he knew who would be lost. He remembered how Reverend Rice gave him his charge. I want you to arm them with the tools they need to get through the drug trade and the gangbangers. Build their self-esteem to the point where they see another way. It was a hard job then, and it hadn't gotten any easier in the 3 years he'd been mentoring. When that night session was over, Humphrey was just about to leave when he saw Reverend Rice. Hey, man, the minister said, shaking his head. I really appreciate what you're doing, brother. He saw that he was embarrassing Humphrey. Listen, I want to ask you something about banking. Humphrey looked at him expectantly. What would it take to start a bank? Humphrey laughed. A lot. Like what? Money. Because I assume the person or group will be buying an existing bank. Then you need a board. You need people to run it. And they'd have to be approved by the feds. It's not easy. Why? A white man came in here not too long ago talking about my endorsing a program Angel City National is starting that would offer minorities low mortgage loans. I told him they ought to offer low interest business loans. Then I got to thinking, the hell with Angel City. Why shouldn't we have our own full service commercial bank? What do you think? I think it's a lot of work, Humphrey said with a laugh. Yeah, well, everything that's worthwhile is a lot of work. Think about it. Damn straight, Adele said as he walked away. I'ma do that. As he drove back to the marina, Humphrey felt drained. He mulled over the evening's discussion, seeing in his mind the faces of the boys. He thought it was good, using Adam and Eve and the apple as an example of when to say no to yourself. They got that. Yeah, he thought, as he began to smell the ocean. Just say no. End of chapter 11. Thank you for persevering with me. I really wanted to get that one out and read because I think I'm coming down with something.